Welcome to Deep Thought, the mindsets of social classes. And you know what, when I do these videos on Deep Thought, it is just random thinking. It really is. When I come up with subjects to talk about, it's I don't talk about relationships that much sometimes, but stuff could be related to money, stuff could be related to, I don't get into religion. I don't want to influence anybody's spiritual choices. But, I'll throw some metaphysics stuff out there, some deeper stuff that goes across everything. But one of the things, I was inspired to do this because I actually saw a clip from that movie, Crazy Rich Asians. Crazy Rich Asians. It is about, this young man from a rich family in Singapore marrying this Asian American woman and everything. And his family and his social circle, how they moved, was just a totally different thing. And like I said, I can be inspired to talk because it's still thought. Because for those who follow hermetics, you realize all is thought anyway. Now, if you don't follow hermetics, all is thought. Everything is thought. Everything is mindset. As people move through the world, if their minds are working, they're going to have a certain mindset. They're going to look at stuff a certain way. They're going to dress a certain way, right? And I was thinking about the mindsets of social classes because when I saw the clip from Crazy Rich Asians and the way I think, the way my mind thinks, I started adapting it to other stuff. And on my main channel, I've talked about relationships within social classes. Relationships. But the thing is, that's because it's different mindsets within each group. It's different mindsets. I mean, that's just all it is. It's a different mindset. Because when you have different classes, okay, here's a great example. You have, some people call them the lumpen proletariat, very poor people. Their mindset is going to be different from crazy rich people. And here's the thing, because their mindset is affected by their living conditions. Because that's one thing. If you're in a situation where your family is on state assistance, or your family is in, shall we say, the underground economy, or, based on like low-level hustles, or whatever, or you can only make money at best you can do because of your education and everything, get on like low-level jobs, low-paying jobs, where, you're going to live different and think different from someone who's crazy rich. Because one, you can't live the same way. Because when you talk about money, money is a tool in order to live in society. So you're going to think different. So if you're real poor, you might be lucky and you can get maybe state assistance for medical care and stuff, but then that's not the best. That's not the best. And there's still some folks that, for whatever reason, they don't even get that much. They might make just enough money not to get state assistance or state or federal assistance, but then not enough to really get good medical care. Despite the Affordable Care Act, there's a lot of people who, they just in a weird place. They can't afford it, but they make too much to get free care, but not enough to even pay into the Affordable Care Act. So these are people out here, they got to think different. They got to do different. Like I remember reading about a group of dentists who would go around to poor communities and give them free dental service. Free dental service. And I remember some of the individuals who received that, they were talking about how if they had a toothache or something, they had to live with it. They had to live with it, just find a lot of pain, just find some medicine. They got used to it, or they got to deal with an ailment because they can't get medical care. And that's just one example. You can't eat the same. You might have to live in an area that's not as good. It's a dangerous overall environment. You might have to live on a premises that's infested with rats and roaches. Now, you're going to think a certain way because it's affecting how you think. If you got to look at this, stomp a roach or You hear that noise and you hoping it's just a mouse and not a rat. You're going to think a whole lot differently from someone on the other end of the spectrum. You're going to have a different mindset. Because someone on the other end of the spectrum, someone who's affluent at the minimum or rich, medical care, boom. Homes, please. They can get a home built from scratch that is, for the most part, will prevent anything from coming in. For the most part. And even if some critter gets in there, hey, pet control or not pet control, exterminator, they can get it fixed. Let's use the medical example. They can get the best medical care. They can get not only the best medical care, but they can afford the best foods to eat. They can afford the best foods to eat so they don't get in trouble. They can exercise the best gyms. They can stay healthier. And then they not stressing over paying the next bill. We're talking affluent where they're home, whether they renting or buying, they already got money for it. Even if they renting something, they can be renting something high end, but notice I said high end. They ain't worried about the same issues. They can move into a good neighborhood where they can just walk around freely. Like you see some of these, like, not even rich neighborhoods, but where more upper middle class, you got women running around with their babies, walking their dogs, everything. They're more the place of peace. They're going to think in a different way. And then they're going to think about what you can accomplish. I remember I saw this special back in the day about this young lady in a poor neighborhood. And she was thinking it would be good just to make $2,000 a month. So that was her mindset. Now somebody, that would look good. There's some people now wish they could make $2,000 a month. But then the mindset of somebody in an affluent community, they like $2,000 a month. I feel bad if I just get $2,000 a day. That's even lower. They literally get like several thousand daily, personally. So their mindset is going to be different. And then, more middle class, they probably living better, can afford medical care, but then, they might have to pay more close attention. It's going to affect how you thinking. Your economics are going to affect how you think, and it's affecting your education. And even sociologists have said it affects your behavior. It affects your behavior. Because you're going to behave, you're going to move in a different way. Now, I've seen this myself. I've said it. I've said it on several times publicly. I've been through all the social classes, so I saw it there. And even as an adult, there's been times making money, living in that good place, but then certain circumstances happen and living in some jacked up areas. Or not jacked up, but just lower. And it was like, oh, wait a minute, you thinking differently. It's different, when you have a situation, it's just a difference. Here's a great example. Half of all Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency. Half of all Americans. Now, even when I was struggling, there was a struggle at first, but got back to the point where I remember running into a deer. I ran into a deer, so, I had to call insurance, all of that. $500 deductible. I was like, oh yeah, go ahead, take care of it. Let's get the car fixed right away. And I thought about that. I was like, you know what? Had to work to get back to this point, but there's some people not even at that point. When you see these cars running around and they dented up and all of that, you already know they can't afford it. And it's usually if they got insurance, they can't fix it or anything. Even the car I got now, paid for it right away. Don't have to worry about a car note. And if something happened insurance-wise, boom. If something happens that for whatever reason insurance don't cover, it's like, oh, shoot, let's get me a new car. In a position to pay cash for a new car. So it's like, wait a minute. Wow, that's a different mindset because you're not constrained. Because it can actually cause stress if you're worried about just everyday living. And I'm just saying, as someone who's been on both ends throughout life and then even again as an adult, he's like, you know what, you thinking different every level of the way. So imagine that for all the social classes. There's differences. That's why on my main channel, I said, yeah, that affects relationships. You know, a person, an individual who's grown up in an affluent environment, used to like getting the best medical care, not worried, stressing over money or how to spend or how to pay a bill, they're going to have trouble dealing with somebody who's on a day-to-day survival mode. They're not going to relate. It's two levels of behavior. That's why I said, you know, social class makes a big difference. So I want y'all to think about that. I want y'all to think about that. All right? Just think about that. Think about where you are. Think about times in your life everything's going well. Think about times when stuff is dipped. And just think about it on your own. Now, you blessed if you probably lived at the same level all your life. But any one of y'all who's gone through periods where you might have lost that job, you might have struggled a bit, then you picked it up. You'll notice it's a different, you start thinking differently. You're looking at stuff differently. You know? You just move differently. And it's, you know, it's something to think about. It's something to think about when, you know, like, I'll say this just real quick. Like, I look at my car, and it's about 5 years old and stuff, and think, oh, yeah, just get me a new one if I want it. Or if there's a scratch or anything, I can't fix it. I actually thought about painting the car. But I was thinking about that, you know, there would have been a time I'd have been just happy if it was running. If I had it running. Shit, I remember a time having to change my own tires. That's how bad. It was enough just to afford the tires. It was like, but you start thinking differently. You're just like, wow. In fact, when I went up to, it was funny, when I went up to New York back in April for the New York, for the Game Kings 2 seminar, I actually changed my tires on the car before going. Because I would have been I was on the highway. I actually changed my tires and it was like, took care of it. Boom. So it's like, you know, it came a long way. But then that's when I really thought about mindset. You think differently. Trust me, the money, the amount of, that's the importance of money, really. It changes how you're going to think and look at stuff and do stuff, you know? So I want y'all to think about that. Think about that. And yeah, have a good weekend. Talk to y'all Sunday morning, all right? Peace.